let's get into it. Let's talk about some of these regrets that you have and some of the cards that you did sell too early. Again, we celebrate the wins in the hobby. You don't hear a lot about some of the losses, let's say. So let's hear about some. Let's hear about some of them, and let's start off by talking about, how do you feel about it? Do you dwell on these? Where is your head at? Like, literally, some people, if who might have left millions of dollars on the table could be depressed about it. They could have actual, mental health issues stemming from it. How do you handle it? How are you dealing with it when you look back?
I would say I'm a pretty optimistic person overall, and it was good that I didn't look at cards for over a decade. I started looking through them in 2011-ish, 12-ish, because cards was kind of like going up a little bit, and so I took them out of the garage and started looking at them, going through them, and send many of them to the grading companies. But then I realized it wasn't a passion that I had, in the late 90s, right? So I kind of made a decision at that time to kind of sell everything, just get out of the hobby altogether. And so that's what I started doing for the next 5 years. That's how long it took me to sell most of my collection. Well, let me put in perspective. People want to hear numbers. Between 2012 and 2017, I calculated, I was going through my PWCC account and some other accounts, my eBay and some other auction accounts. I calculated I sold $3 million worth of cards.
What about, and that includes like private deals, like the one that Spinatron mentioned?
Yeah, that includes
on Instagram.
Yeah, that includes that. That's 2014 that I sold him. But then between those years, the 3 point something million dollar worth of cards, conservatively estimated, would be over 100 million today. Yeah.
So when I said earlier that people who might have left a few $1 million on the table could suffer mental illness from that, self-inflicted. I didn't realize. Yep. Sorry, Dave. I didn't realize that it was that big of a number. How do you? How do you deal with that today? Like we're talking $97 million, let's say. How do you deal with that, leaving that on the table?
I work hard on other stuff so I don't have to think about this money I left on the table. Probably, all the other business that I have now, and combined, will not be able to make that money back anytime soon. So just enjoy, laugh about it, knowing myself that, I've been contributing to this market and this hobby for a long time. Because a lot of those cards people knew, but they don't know it was mine. So it was kind of like several of those cards became a game changer for the hobby, shifted directions in some ways.
So, I mean, listen, a lot of the cards, the big cards that were sold between 2013 and 2017, and maybe I don't want to say most of them, but like a good chunk of them were from your collection, and nobody really knows. Well, some people would know, but most people in the hobby don't know where those cards came from, and they came from your collection. You were watching it. Obviously, you knew exactly what was going on at the time. I was watching. I had no idea whose they were, but you did. And because they were yours, it feels to me like, this might sound crazy to say, but are you partially responsible for the state of the hobby? Now listen, the hobby blew up in 2020. We know there were a whole bunch of reasons why, between the last dance and COVID and all these things going on. But leading up to that, there was still a ramp up going into the spring of 2020. Do you feel that your selling of those cards has had something to do with bringing the hobby to where we are today?
I would have to say definitely not for the post COVID period, but definitely prior to the COVID period. Let's say between the years I sold them. to the last big card that I sold, the Michael Jordan PMG green that everyone saw on the screen. That card definitely had an impact on bringing the hobby to the mainstream. Right? I think that card definitely had an impact.
Oh, I agree. It certainly it had an impact on me. I remember watching that auction the first time. Oh, let's talk about that for a second, because that you sold that card through PWCC. It was a huge card for them at the time, and something happened, if I recall. I think it ended up selling in February of 2019 was the ultimate sale, but didn't they list it a couple months before, the month before, and there were a bunch of fake bids placed, and then they had to take it down and start over again? What was that like for you as the owner of the card, watching a bunch of people throw in $1 million bids that were never going to, pay for it? Explain that whole process and that chain of events to us, and how you were feeling as that was happening.
I mean, I was actually in the States when the card was sold. I was in my hotel. I was at this art show, Freeze LA. I was attending the art show. So I was looking through my eBay, and it wasn't actually posted a month before. It was actually posted days before.
Okay.
And they relisted again. During the second or third days, the card went up to over 500,000. And then Brent just emailed me, the owner of PWCC, and told me that he thinks there's a lot of suspicious bids, and he wants to relist it, and ask for my opinions, because prior to that card, there were some instances where I was not happy with how PWCC handled my collection prior to that. We could get into that later, but so I agreed to it. I say go ahead, and then so they relisted, and it got sold for 350,000.
And were you satisfied with the sale at 350 at the time?
I was. Yeah, I was.
Did you know? Did you know who was bidding on it? Like, did you know while the auction was live? Did you know who was bidding on that card?
I knew a couple because they tried to buy it off of me before, and I knew Nat would be a participant, but I kind of had an idea that he would be the buyer as well. So,
do you know who the underbidder was? I mean, somebody had to bid it up to 350, not just Nat. So, do you have any idea?
But there were a couple of the big time legit buyers for sure. That I could tell you, because they tried to buy it off of me privately. Actually, at a price pretty close to the final sales number, actually.
What do you think that card is worth today? That exact card that Nat ended up purchasing.
I'm not the best person to ask about prices today. If you knew what I sold last year, I don't know. But it would be a big. I think it could break the basketball record again.
So what is the basketball record right now? Like 5 million, something like that?
4 point something, or like 4 point something million or something like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you think I mean, there's only 10 made, and I think one person has 4 or 5 of them right now. So that leaves a few. Tough to say, but it certainly is maybe, it's up there as one of the most important cards in the whole hobby, like in the whole history of the hobby. So for that and that copy it's an authentic altered copy as well, isn't it? It's not even graded with a number. So
that's something I would like to add, because I graded the near complete set myself, the red and the green. Not with PSA, I graded with BGS prior to that. I knew when I bought the card, I didn't do anything to it, and many of the cards, actually, I opened the cases. I invested in a card store at that time, and we opened a lot of cases because we couldn't really sell them. And we got a couple copies, and even those copies, when they were sent to grade, they came back altered. So
even though they weren't altered,
even though they were pulled from the pack myself. Yeah.
Well, as we know, grading is an opinion. It's not definitive. So it is what it is in that case. But I guess it's just something we have to accept as participants in this hobby. Yeah. So okay, I'm just looking at some comments here. Sue's her mind is blown. Dave's it is wild. And we're talking again, if you just joined, Dave on screen here just mentioned that, the cards that he sold between 2013 and 2016,
16, 17, yeah.
16, 17, he sold for about $3 million. Today, those cards would be worth over $100 million. And it's about $97 million left on the table there. So when we're talking about the Regret Chronicles, I mean, this guy handles it with a level of class that I don't know that I know I wouldn't be handling it that well. So kudos to you. Justin Vick says Dave Chau was an industry. Again, you're somebody who isn't well known, but the key people in the hobby who know where big cards have been definitely know who you are. B. Roy, yeah, and you are smiling for sure. Dave says, well, I'm sure the cards you own today will 5x in upcoming years. Hey, hopefully that'll be good that'll be good for everybody, right? Les Edwards, what's going on, Les? Good to see ya. Jay says, basically, Dave created the first big-time collection. I think he's talking about the cards you had in your collection.
The modern stuff.
I guess so. Skeppy says it's not about what you missed. It's about what you did with what you got. So what did the $3 million do for you? Do you want to discuss that?
Yeah, it's kind of a sad story. It went to a company that I invested, which went bankrupt during the COVID. So pretty much I lost everything.
Dave, stop laughing, man. Wow, no, I'm kidding. That's the fact that you're laughing is that's something for sure. How are you laughing? I mean, obviously you are not starving. You've got other things going on. You must be capitalized. I have no idea what your net worth is, anything like that. I'm not going to ask about it. None of our business. But is it fair to say that you're doing all right?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, definitely not ultra mega rich, but I'm doing okay, I would have to say.